encouraged by the speakers before me, the subject that I'm going to talk about is probably a little bit more home to you. It is going to be about corporations and management and my experiences in the last more than 15 years in dealing with organizations, dealing with some of the most important topics that organizations face, and that topic is change. So my work today involves dealing with a lot of professional managers and dealing with some of the key issues that they face. And all of us have heard a lot of talk about change, about individual change, about social change, and now I'm going to talk about corporate change. Now, why is corporate change so important? The reason it is because all of us spend a majority of our waking lives in the places that we work. And it is these places that we work which really shape us and define us, and our contribution to the organization and what the organization gives back to us. So I think it's time that we really think about what we do in these organizations and how we can help these organizations grow. One of the first stories that I really want to share with you today is not from my professional experience at all, but it is from a personal experience. I guess the auditorium is small so that my voice still reach you, right? Okay. So, as I was saying, the first experience I want to share with you today is not from my professional work, but from my personal experience and about my family, and more closer to me is the story of my mother. So, like every other woman in those days, she got married at an early age. She is a lawyer by education, and as the life went on in the hustle bustle of raising kids and managing the family, her career fell by the side. But that did not stop her. She managed to start her own home-based business, and today she is a sought-after person in counseling, in women counseling, in helping women grow spiritually and also looking good. Now, when I reflect upon this story and I look at how my mother really changed her approach towards life as life went on, I realized that it's all about mental fortitude. So one day I really asked her, what was going through your mind as you were going through all those years of change? And this is what she told me. The first thing is that you need to be adaptable to change. Now, being adaptable to change requires a few things. The first thing it requires is courage. I mean, change requires you to adapt, and adaptation requires courage. So if you don't have the courage, you cannot really face those difficult situations in your life. Secondly, she said you need to have a temperament that flows like a river. Doesn't get bogged down by all the small pebbles and big stones that will definitely come your way when you're moving in your life. And the last, which I cannot help repeating, is drop your ego. Know what is important to hold on to and know what is not important to hold on to. What is important to hold on to are your beliefs, your vision, your dreams, your aspiration. And what is definitely not important to hold on to is your ego and all your petty attachments. Now, this is what kind of set me thinking that yes, as an individual, here is my mother who's really transformed herself and the lives of people around her, and a lot of other people I know couldn't really cope up with the changes in their life and really led less fulfilling lives. Now, coming back to companies, that's what the subject that I want to talk to you about, because I have done my MBA from one of the best institutions in the country, that is NMIMS, and I started working with companies. I joined the corporate sector and looked at a host of roles before I decided to become a consultant. So in one of my first interviews as a potential consultant, the interviewer asked me this one last question at the end. He said, Javin, if you were not here at this time appearing for this interview, what would you be doing? And without a moment's hesitation, I replied, I would have been a doctor helping somebody in need. Now, I eventually got that role, and I realized as time went by that I naturally tend to help people, and I extend that into helping organizations. So today you might say what I am is something of a corporate doctor. In the last 15 years of my work consulting with organizations, I have seen that every 3 to 5 years, companies want to change something. They want to change their product portfolio, they want to change their go-to-market strategy, they want to change their human development index, and they want to have a lot of things that will help them become better.
Now why does that happen? There are two main reasons that I have seen that these things happen. One is when there is a change in the management. You have a new CEO or a new CFO or a new COO, and they want to bring in some change in the organization and they want to do something radical. The other thing is when there is a new management technique, whether it is lean or TQM, and they want to try all those things out in their organization. But very few organizations I have seen, one of our clients has really been able to embrace the change. So this is a company which is spread across developing economies all over the world. In each of those economies, this company is like in the movie 300, they are the Spartans and they are fighting against the vast Persian army. Now this company realized very early on in its career or in its history that in order to grow or even to survive in these markets, it will have to adapt, it will have to welcome change. So from day one, they decided to go into untapped territories, untapped segments, and once they succeed in one segment, they launch another. Once they succeed in one country, they launch other. This is an example of a company that embraced change. And this company said, yes, change is inevitable, and I'm going to do something about it. Now this is where the difference lies between successful and not so successful companies. Everyone understands that change is inevitable. The question is, what are you going to do about it? So how do you change your strategy and your products and your people to make sure that you harness the opportunities that change brings rather than complain about it? But not all companies are so lucky. So we were looking at some of the research done in management, and this is that part of the presentation where it's like a movie or it's like a whodunit. It's like, what happened to all these companies? And the question I'm asking you is related to the Fortune 500 companies. So all of us know this, at least most of you who've done, all of you have done your MBA, and most of you who've read about this, is the change in the composition of the Fortune 500 from the 1960s till date. Now, it's really surprising. Let me tell you one thing. In the 1980s, it took just 5 years for the Fortune 500 to be replaced. In the 1970s, it took an entire decade to replace the Fortune 500. And in the 1950s and 60s, it took 2 decades. Now, what does this mean? Number one, that the pace of change is getting faster. 40 years back, you could be in the Fortune 500 list for 20 years and not be worried about losing your place. And as time went by in the 70s and 80s, the time that each company could spend in the Fortune 500 became lesser and lesser. Not just that, in the 1960s, fewer than 10 new businesses were added to the Fortune 500 list every year. Today, there are 50 per year. What this means, and of course this data is related to the Americas, to the United States. What this means is that 8 out of America's 25 biggest firms today either did not exist or were very small in the 1960s. The companies that made 1999's Fortune 500 list need to say goodbye to 238 of their peers a mere 10 years later, which means if you compare the 99 Fortune 500 list and the 2009 Fortune 500 list, you will see a change of around 50%. MIT Sloan School of Management professor Peter Senge presents the average life of a Fortune 500 company to be 30 years. Jim Collins, the author of Built to Last, notes only 71 companies of the original 1955 Fortune 500 list are there today. Why am I presenting all these statistics? The reason is very simple. The reason is that nobody can rest on their laurels. Nobody can say that, hey, I've made it and now I'm going to be here forever. As the economy changes, as the environment changes, it's forcing people to change. Now, either you welcome the change and adapt to the change, or like other companies which were forced to change, you can be out of the Fortune 500 or any other ranking, or even be out of business, or even declare bankruptcy. Like this, a full 1/3 of the companies listed in the 1970 Fortune 500, for instance, had vanished by 1983. Now, this is not a very simple fact to digest. When I saw this, it was quite shocking. They were either acquired, merged, or broken to pieces. Now, we are talking about companies. We are talking about the places where we will be going to work. And you don't know what's going to happen to the company 10 years, 15 years from now. unless we do a few things, which I'll talk about in the later half of this presentation. And here is what we did. We just looked at it in a very graphical way, and you can see here you have on the x-axis the years from the start, that is from the start of the Fortune 500 ranking and companies remaining in the list. What you will see is that in 1955, the black line, it used to take around 35 years for a company to remain in the list. But the green line here, 1995, it took less than 15 years for the company to remain in the list. Again, I'm just driving home this point because we need to know what we are up against, and the future is going to be even more quicker or even more faster as far as changes are concerned. So what is the writing on the wall? The writing on the wall seems to be change or perish. So we had this hypothesis. We said, what happened to these companies? So there were two hypotheses. One is that the companies failed to recognize the change that is happening in their environment. They failed to recognize the change that is happening in their marketplace, in their products, in their customers, and hence they did not adapt and they perished. What about the companies that did change, and what about the companies that said, okay, let me now adapt to the environment, change my strategy, product portfolio, resizing, and hence we looked at some other statistics which was on change. Now, one reason for these companies to opt out of the Fortune 500 list, one of our hypotheses was that the composition of the board of directors. And what we found is that from 2009 till 2013, the turnover in the board composition was less than 7%. This means that the boards of these companies did not allow any fresh ideas or any new opportunities to enter into the board. The average age of newly appointed directors remained virtually unchanged at 57. This is very interesting. From 2009 to 2013, sitting or former CEOs accounted for half the newly appointed directors, which means you were a CEO before and now you've become a board of directors. So if you made some mistakes in the past, you will repeat them again. The same is true for the CFOs. Sitting or former CFOs accounted for nearly 17% of the newly appointed directors. Now, what does this mean? Again, change or perish. But what happened to those companies who decided to change? And when we look at the data, and this is something that we do in our organization for a living, and so this is so important for us, we saw that over 70% of change initiatives fail. And when I say fail, it means they fail to produce the desired results. Okay, they did not fail completely, maybe they got some partial results, but over 70% of change initiatives ever done by corporates have failed. Now this is a startling number. 29% of change initiatives were launched without any formal structure. And the most shocking, of course the data is from the United States again, the Department of Labor Statistics says that between June 2009 and October 2013, over 2 million people lost their jobs in the United States alone, arising out of 18,000 events of layoffs. Now, this is something which I really want to talk about, and maybe not very commonly seen in India, but maybe around the globe, extremely important. In fact, there's a blog which says how I lost my job, and I think it's worth talking about. How do you feel a person feels when he's lost his job or her job? And why should losing a job be any different from any other crime? Because losing a job is losing your financial independence, your emotional security, and your social security. And we just hear news every day in the paper which talks about layoffs happening, and we just see the news and we say, oh, we'll shrug our shoulders and say, well, this can happen because, well, companies are all about making profits. So what is really going on here? Now, the fact is that we do have to change, right? The fact is that we have to manage the change. But most of us, when we finish our MBAs and go to the corporate world, we will be either the plant manager of a large FMCG company or the brand manager of a large pharmaceutical company. My honest appeal, my request to each and every one of you is please do not look at it as a job. It is really not a day job. The lives and careers of all the people working in that plant or the lives and careers of all the people working in sales or marketing in that division depend upon you. any misreading of the external environment, and you can be rest assured that things can change drastically for you. So my humble request is, do not look at your job as a job, but look at a job as a source of responsibility, where a lot of other people's lives are going to be dependent on you. So the next question I can probably hear you asking is, this is fine, you've told us about what happened to companies which did not change. You also told us that companies who tried to change failed. So what it is that you want us to do? Now, based on all the experience I've had dealing with change in small companies and large companies, in all kinds of projects, here is what we feel that our advice to you would be when you go out into the world. We would request you first and foremost to really define what to change. And this is something one of my mentors told me. I've had lots of mentors in my life. I've been blessed to have worked with a lot of great people, including all my bosses. And this is something one of my mentors told me. The first thing that you really need to think about, and as managers our job is to really think about what's going on in our organizations, is what to change. Don't run helter-skelter and try to fix everything. Don't try to say, okay, what prima facie appears to be the problem, I'm going to solve it. To really sit down, think about it, and analyze the situation to figure out what to change. Now, this is not easy, right? You have so many things that you can do in an organization. But here is where our Shastras or Vedas or even the sciences help us. There is something called cause and effect, which we've read about in the Gitas or in the science textbooks or in the physics textbooks. Is it possible that the same principle of cause and effect can apply to our organizations? If I look around me and I find some symptoms of things which are going wrong, for example, my sales are down. Now you will say, all right, your sales are down because our prices are too high. Now what the sciences will tell is, this is not watertight. Hang on, this logic doesn't seem to be 100% correct. Your sales are down because the prices of your products are high. And what else? Could there be something else? So you sit to think about it and you say, yes, our sales are down because the prices of our products are high and our customers do not perceive the features or benefits of our products at those high prices. Now here is where you build a watertight logic and you build a definition of a problem statement. So your problem is not that my prices are high. Your problem could be that your customers are not able to perceive the value of your product at that high price. Now this, when you think about it and start building all these cause and effect relationships in your organizations for all the problems that you see, will finally lead you to what to change. And this is when you have really defined the problem. Now comes the next question, what to change to? And well, I'm sorry, I've just run out of time, and I'll just finish this one slide. What to change to? What to change to is, again, coming out of an analysis of the problem. What to change to is the direction of the solution. Once you find out the direction of the solution, do not stop there, because the third question that you need to answer is how to cause the change. And unless you really define the roadmap for moving from what to change to what to change to, you will not be able to get the benefits of the change. The last sentence I want to really leave with you is that be ready for a lot of interesting opportunities in your MBA life. And remember that while you cannot control the direction of the wind, you can definitely control the direction of the sail which will take you to your destination. Thank you.